Hello, LinkedIn. Rodrigo here from MyTelescope. And we haven't been live for a while. I don't know, I think life happened. But finally, we have now the time to be back here again. And today's guest, we have Julia Kinner, who's a marketing consultant helping, I think, companies of all sizes, I suppose, driving growth. And But the reason I wanted her on this talk was that I saw one of her posts a couple of months ago on how small brands grow. And I thought she already had a book on it, which she hadn't yet. But I thought it was a really interesting topic because for me, that has been working with brand building and marketing for many years, it's always been a thought that small brands, when you talk to them, like, no, we can't afford this, we can't do this because we don't have money. And I think it's much due to the fact that people think about brand equals advertising and big campaigns and Super Bowl ads, etc., etc. And so that's why I thought it was super interesting that someone was looking into this field with the glasses of a small company. And of course, that's becoming a hot topic since. And just yesterday, I saw a post on people analyzing Aaron Bass Institute, and I know that MailChimp has been doing a series together with Les Binet and others. So so the topic of today is going to be not about exactly how brands grow if you're a small one, but actually that it all starts with research and insights, and that's also something that many small brands have. I think, myself included, we start with our gut feeling and then we think that's enough. And I'm not saying gut is bad, I'm just saying that you should be enriched with insights. And many people also think that it's something that you can't do when you are small because it's too expensive. And that's something I wanted to bring Julia to talk to us about. But before we jump into that topic, Julia, welcome, and please introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's a great pleasure, and I'm really looking forward to talk a bit more about the book and what we do. Maybe to introduce myself in a few words. My name is Julia Kinner. I'm a marketing consultant. I'm based in beautiful Zurich, Switzerland. And what I do is I help brands grow. My focus is on marketing strategy and execution. That means what we do for our clients, we define the perfect marketing strategy for them based on a lot of consumer insights. And then we also help them with the execution.
When you talk about consumer insights, because I think that's something that many B2B brands might think that, no, but we don't have consumers, we have customers. How do you talk to them about that, and how do you get them, so that, because that's something I've been struggling with in my career, like how do you find the lingo, because it's actually the same thing, it's just that one maybe have a scale that is bigger.
Yes. No, at the end of the day, I think it doesn't really matter if you call your consumers or customers or whatsoever, whether that is a B2B or B2C buyer. At the end of the day, you're always selling to human beings, no? And what you need to do as a business, you need to make sure that you understand first, of course, the market context. That means, what is my market? Where are the largest profit pools in the market? What are the segments and the consumer needs behind those profit pools? And what do you need to do as a business with your entire value proposition, with your 4Ps, etc., to be able to capture that value? And typically for me, that always starts with consumer insights. You start with some qualitative insights where you maybe just go out and talk to your customers. And there, I think the argument we can't afford it or anything like that is super stupid, because you just have to go out there, talk to your customers, understand what they are going through, what they like, what they don't like, what are their real problems, what's the consumer job to be done. And then ideally, you combine that with some quantitative market research that just allows you to really understand all the quantitative details behind. That means, what is the size of a segment, what's the value behind that segment, etc. And once you did that exercise, you have a pretty comprehensive view on what's going on, and that just gives you a very solid baseline for further business decisions. That means for your choices about where you want to play. That means, which segments do I want to address, and what do I need to do to increase my chances of winning? And I think that's some the two most basic questions that you need to ask yourself as a business.
I think back to your point of go out there and just talk to your customers. I think many do that, but I think they don't maybe see that as doing research. I think what many maybe confuse research with is the part that is quantitative more than the qualitative part, and that's
Yes.
kind of where they feel that they can't afford it.
Yes.
What has been your, what have you observed in your journey with working with the various brands across various markets? Do you think it's scary to prepare that quantitative part, or or do you think that many people actually do it but without thinking about it?
I think there are very many different types. On the one hand, you have those businesses that just skip the step, that think, okay, we were making some research on the internet, we found XYZ, we maybe talked to a couple of customers, and we do think that's enough. So we just don't bother. Then very often you have the argument, oh, it is too expensive, which I think is not very valid, because if I look at, just based on my experience, how much money is wasted on marketing strategies that are just not on point because you don't understand your market, then I think it's a very weak argument. And I think the most expensive market research is the one that you don't do, because you just build your marketing strategy on very fragile legs. And sometimes you're luckier, but the question is, do you want to rely on your luck, or do you want to find a replicable system for growth? And this is something that I'm working in, that we are working in, also with a partnering consulting firm. So my objective is really to build a framework for businesses of different sizes and show them how can I grow in a structured way, and somehow reducing that component of luck, which will always be there. I mean, I think we don't have to discuss that. You always need some luck, but the question is, how can you maybe minimize the luck in that equation?
Do you have any tip from your journey that you would say, okay, think about these three things to make it in a structured way? I mean, think about it. Maybe it might be a smaller brand that is I don't have the team. We're only 10 people. We're trying to survive here. How do I do this?
There is so many things you can do with 10 people. You just have to know what you need to do. And I think maybe three tips, if we say. First, analyze your internal data. Really understand what are the consumers that you have at the moment. What might be the differences in value and profitability? If you talk to those consumers, so if you combine that quantitative and that quantitative internal analysis with a qualitative one, what are like the patterns that emerge? So I think that is one thing that everyone can do. You have that data internally, you just have to look at it the right way. And then,
sorry, and to interrupt there, when you say look at it the right way, what do you mean by that?
I think for me, it's really breaking it down per value. And I think that is what a lot of businesses don't do. They look at consumer data, but they aren't necessarily able to link that to real business outcomes, which in most cases will be consumer value. That means maybe profit margin or whatever, any more bottom line result. And I think this is something that I see a lot of times is not happening. So you look at consumer data, but you are not really able to understand how is that linked to the value that I create with my business.
Great, thank you. Sorry, yes. Now I can let you go to number two.
Number two, what was that? Tip number two, I think, doing the qualitative and the quantitative insight. I think that will be two. And then I think if you somehow have the budget, just do a quantitative market research, and it will maybe cost you 15,000, 20,000, but then you really understand your market. You understand your market, you understand your competition, you understand consumer preferences, you understand consumer drivers, you understand point of market entry. And for me, that is all very, very essential points to be able to build a solid marketing strategy that is not just doing what everybody else is doing, which is basically running digital ads and trying to make it somehow. So that will be the three things that I can recommend to any business. And I think, yeah, to repeat myself, the most expensive market research is the one that you don't do.
No, I can totally agree with that. And I think as a founder myself we've been building on MyTelescope for a while. And of course, in the beginning, the technology wasn't on our side. So we were trying to build an agent on our own. And then, of course, that is very, very expensive. So now we're so happy that you have technology that allowed us to build the product. But now that, and when we had the product, of course, we've been part of our community on our own. So in that sense, you have a lot of data
Yes.
from your own knowledge. But I think what's
Yes.
been really, really important for us has been constantly speaking to
Yes.
customers to understand their pains and how we
Yeah.
help them. And one of the pains that we've seen that I would challenge on maybe going out there and doing surveys is that when you do a survey, you get like one data point and you don't understand if there is a trend. And something what we have seen with search data in particular, that
Yes.
when you know kind of the entry point to extract that trend, to see if it's a sustained trend or if it's something that it's a fad or something that started to go down in interest. None of them does mean a bad thing. It's just you
Yes.
just need to know where the trend is at this current market situation. That maybe if it is something that is going down, you might have to rebuild attention for that, or you have to find another entry point to kind of speak to your customers
Yes.
because maybe they've forgotten about their pain point.
Yeah, I think it's a very, very interesting point just to complement maybe a quantitative research, no? They really understand trends in the market. Are things going up? Are things going down, etc.? So I think it's a very good point. Yes.
And I mean, you've been working now as a consultant and helping teams to grow. Do you have some? I mean, what made you want to start writing a book on smaller brands, and what triggered that?
I think it was a lot of frustration, basically, with literature that is there, and I think the maybe not most famous, but for me the best example is how brands grow. No, I love the book. I really like the book. I think it has helped marketing a lot. But my problem with it is that the approach to growth that is described there is just, I mean, it's very much focused on communication. And second point, I think it's very much biased towards large brands. So if you take the book and you give it to a small brand, they will say, thank you, interesting. But what do we really do with it? Does it really help us to grow? And I mean, I'm maybe to understand a bit my background, I come very much from the 4P marketing side of things. It's a very traditional approach where you say you do your segmentation, your targeting, your positioning, you define your objectives, and then you define your 4Ps. And that is something that is just completely ignored there, and which I found it very, very hard, because how am I supposed to grow a brand if it's not clear if my product is in line with market needs, if my value proposition is the right one, if my business growth model is the right one? That means how do my 4Ps play together in order to be able to grow? And so that was all things that were missed from me. And so I think, no, that's not it. And then on the other side, if you go on Amazon and you look for marketing books, I mean, you find a lot of things, no? And they mostly just cover one aspect. They talk about brand, they talk about, I don't know, startup growth, etc. And so I really wanted to come up with something that explains the growth of brands more holistically. And we will call the book How Small Brands Grow, which will actually be a misnomer, just like how brands grow. Because what we will do there, we will cover the growth stages. So like the startup phase, the scale-up phase, and the maturity phase. And we define a framework that exactly explains what are the most important things at each stage of your growth, because that is very, very different. If you're a startup, you have different problems versus a scale up. There are different things you need to pay attention to. And so this is actually the objective of the book, and yeah, what will be covered. And we will actually not start with a book. We will start a LinkedIn series in the next couple of days, together with a consulting firm, with FFA, and we will start a publication where we present this framework and combine it with FMCG use cases of the last 10 years to illustrate what we are, what we are recommending.
Do you have any giveaways that you could nudge the audience with already now?
I do have the PowerPoint presentation that we are going to present, but it's not yet finished. We are really at the moment on the finishing line. We hope that we will finish it in the next 2 to 3 days, but it's not yet good enough to show it.
Okay. Well, so more to come, more to come.
Definitely. In very short time. And then the book, there will be a summary of it beefed up with some further things which I think are important that go beyond that.
How do you think I mean, if you think about the journey, because the topic of today is a lot about insights and how, to maybe also foster a culture where, you are constantly having your ear to the ground to understand where your market is going. Do you have any ideas or recommendations how you could foster that? I think someone wrote in the chat here, the systematic approach of constantly having understanding of your market.
Yes. Constant understanding. I think it's for me, it's a lot about really just talking to your customers regularly, and then also making sense of your data. If you, for example, if you see that, I don't know, your repurchase rate is going down, or your, your churn is going up, then you should just have systems in place that first, I mean, it's quite obvious, that allow you to understand that, but also understand the root causes. And
I was at the portfolio retreat we have VCs backing us, and then they are great. And what they have done is that once a year they create a portfolio retreat for the companies there, which is great as a founder because you get to speak to others and understand their pain points. And what you kind of realize that everybody has kind of the same problems, just different in different ways. But I think one of the things that kind of nobody really had a system for systematic gathering of insights from the market. I mean, they have all these dashboards. I mean, most of them are fantastic. We are crap at it, but many are very good at having all their market, SaaS KPIs, etc., etc.
yes.
But they don't. My feeling was that, and no, not trying to be evil to anyone, but that nobody was really digging deeper to understand the root causes because they were so stuck in their dashboards. How would you say? Because I think you give one advice, like go out there, speak to your customers.
Yes.
But and I think many do that like once, and then they do it 3 years later.
Yes.
How can that be done systematically, you think?
Systematically. I think Coca-Cola recently had a very interesting initiative that is somehow related to that, not exactly, but just establishing a culture where employees, the founder or whoever, is just forced to talk to customers, to go out there. And then it depends which line of business are you in. Are you an FMCG company and you just go to a supermarket, you look at the shelf, you look at what's going on in your category, or you are a tech brand and you just go out, you talk to users, etc. But I think it's really, it's about establishing a culture where you make sure that you're not just sitting behind your laptop and you're looking at your dashboard, and anyway, you don't really understand what's going on at the bottom of it, but you really go out, you look at your customer, you talk to your customers and you understand what's going on. And then if you have the means to quantify that with trends, as we already discussed, then I think that should give you a pretty solid view on what's going on.
So don't take me wrong. I think someone is saying here that dashboards can encourage surface explanations and pattern, and I totally agree. So don't take me wrong. It's not that I don't think these dashboards are fantastic. It's just that I think sometimes we think we have enough information, but we forget the maybe emotional parts of why your customers are not using the product.
Yeah, and what I see very often, I mean, that the businesses, they don't have a lack of data. They lack the ability to make sense of that data and link it to what is really relevant, which is at the end of the day, why do your consumers buy or don't buy you? So what are really the bottlenecks in your journey? Is it a general lack of brand awareness? Is it consideration? Is something wrong with your purchase funnel or whatsoever? And I think this is something that is missing very often, that you don't have a clear understanding on different steps of your purchase journey. What are really the bottlenecks? And once you understand what are your bottlenecks, you also understand what can you do to like open those bottlenecks, because then you can link those to very, very clear actions. And if you measure it, you also know, okay, are we improving over time or are we not improving over time?
I mean, this talk is, of course, I'm trying to get as much outside perspectives as we can to help our audience to understand. But of course, as a MyTelescope founder, we have also, I mean, we're on the journey on our own, and kind of what we're doing. And it would be great to hear your opinion about it. But kind of how I have set up our own kind of understanding of the market is that I use our own data to look at market trends to understand, okay, what are, you know, are people interested in AI currently? Yes, they are, obviously. But there are kind of like general market trends that are maybe more not category linked, but more general, like where's the market heading and where's
Yes,
people's head at. If they are
yes,
nervous about unemployment, then maybe you should not speak about certain topics, or you maybe should see how you could help them with that. For example, now in the current financial situation there is in the world, we of course look at the entry points of how you can be more effective with your money, etc., because that's something that we know many boards are worried about. Then the next step, what we do is that we look at the market from category entry points, so to understand what do our customers in our category that we are going after, what are they interested in, what are they looking for, what type of information are they interested in. And then of course in the last part we look at our own brand to see how we're doing versus competition, and if we're growing against them, or if we're tapping into that interest. And that together gives me a holistic picture that I can follow month to month and give me some inspiration on how to move.
yeah.
And then on top of that, we add interviews. Every week, we try to speak to customers to kind of get their feedback. What do you think about that approach? What's missing?
I'm just asking myself how actionable it is. That means if you do all of those three things, how well does it understand? How well does it allow you to understand what are your next steps, and I mean, you might come up with different options. No, you do your analysis. You look at those three things, and you think, okay, we have option A, B, C, D. But it will not necessarily allow you to understand what's the best option. No, it's still a lot of gut feeling involved. No.
Yeah, and I think in the end, of course, like everything, and this is, and we love to get challenged on this. I'm a strong believer of combining what's happening on the market and with your
Yes.
gut feeling, and combining those two and enriching your gut feeling. Uh, but of course, and that's why we also speak to the customers to kind of understand. Okay, based on these three layers, we build a hypothesis and say, okay, here's a challenge. We're seeing that the big brands are looking for example, big brands are seeing that there's a market saturation in the US. So they are looking into emerging markets to see if they can take their product there. So what we have, that has led us to that
Yes.
we are pinpointing global companies that are looking for markets outside of the US, that they're looking to go to markets where they can grow. And they are normally not number one in their market, they're normally number 5 or something, and they're
Yes.
trying to find new ways. And that is our trends that we have found by looking at where markets are going, looking at what people are looking for on the internet, but of course, then speaking to them and understanding if that hypothesis is correct. And that becomes then that we can then tweak our pricing, our
Yes.
messaging, etc., so that it becomes actionable in the end. Do you think that? And I'm asking for free advice here. What am I missing here? That what should I do to make it even more actionable?
I think for me, it always starts with a problem that you want to solve, no? And I think I would need to understand in more detail what's really the problem you want to solve. And then, I mean, we would have to look at that in more detail. It's a bit hard for me to say that now on the spot and without having the full context. But happy to have that conversation at a later point.
Yeah, it's always good to try to get people's free advice, right? And
We would find it all the time. No, but I would love to, but I think I'm really not in a position to do that because I just really don't understand the entire context of your problem.
No, and I totally get that. The reason why I'm bringing this example up is also to understand when you're saying just exactly these things, like I need to understand your context. What do you mean by that, and what would you do? I mean, if you would advise someone, if they want to start the journey on their own, to start gathering those insights and asking the right questions, how would you go about to start that journey?
If we have a typical consulting project, we would start with analyzing all of your internal data, understand what you did in the past, then look at what are the consumers that you have at the moment, what's the value behind. Then, of course, have a very detailed conversation with you. What are your current business challenges? What are your hypotheses? Why is this going wrong? What are your hypotheses? How could you solve that? And then we would typically go out and do some research after we have completed the internal analysis phase. And then we would discuss with you our recommendations and what we think could be your next best steps in order to really achieve your goals. And then we would maybe also challenge you on your goals and tell you, okay, maybe that's not the right goal. Maybe you should have a
Yeah.
different. Yes.
And normally when they work with you, I mean, how long does a standard project? If I would come to you tomorrow and say, okay, great, Julia, let's start working, what would you recommend me? For how long do you think we should? Forever, or is
No,
it
no,
you
no,
jumpstart me, or?
no, I'm not. I'm not a therapist. You don't have no, it's typically it's 8 to 12 weeks where we say that that's pretty much evenly spread across 3 phases. Where we say we have the internal part, we have the hypothesis generation, then we have the hypothesis validation, and then the final step is like really the strategy and our recommendations. So it's typically you need a 12 weeks if you really want to do it end to end.
It sounds quite quick, and I mean, if you think about the time you're going to keep building your company, I mean, investing that time doesn't sound like a big. It
No,
shouldn't be a big
it's
problem for
actually not.
anyone.
And I think this is something that's so, if I talk to CMOs, they are busy managing their team, they are busy managing their stakeholders. And I hear from so many CMOs, you know what, Julia, I just don't have time for the work that I'm really supposed to do because they're just busy with so many other things. And yes, I fully agree with you. If you say you do one project with us or maybe with a different firm, I don't care. You can get it done in 3 months, and then you have something solid. You have something to build on. You have a plan. You have a step-by-step plan that you can just implement. And if you want, we even help you with implementation to make sure that you stay on track. So yes, I agree. It's not a lot of time and also not a lot of money for what you get, which is a rock solid strategy.
I've seen that we've been getting some people actually commenting here on the on the chat. If we have any questions to Julia, please ask them. We will take them
Sure.
up. We have a couple of minutes more here with her, so if you have any, please bring them up. And on my final kind of notes, questions to you on what do you see as the most kind of exciting right now in the market from your personal point of view, that is kind of like saying, wow, this is so much kind of fun right now because of X is happening in the world, but also at the same time, what is currently scaring you a lot at the same time? And of course, we have a lot of others, war and
Yes,
stuff.
I mean,
They understand.
I I think the answer to both of that, I think, is artificial intelligence. No, I mean, you have a lot of opportunities that are linked to that, but of course, you have a lot of challenges too. And if you just think about what it means for marketing, it means that you can make a lot of things much more efficient. But I see the risk for marketing that you are even more going down to that route where you're fully focused on tactics. You think you can just be faster, do more, etc. But by doing so, you forget strategy and a solid basis even more, and that's the risk I see with it. But for sure, it's exciting, and yeah, a lot of new things popping up that are also very interesting. For example, with respect to brand management, if you think about all the opportunities that opens, if you can just make sure that you have branded visuals in a couple of seconds, I mean, it's brilliant.
No, it saves a lot of time. I think what I've seen, though, I think in the beginning now the internet will be flooded, and it's been already flooded with things that are super bad creative. But I think the good thing is that for creative people, there's actually a way to amplify their work. Here's actually a kind of big question, so we'll see if we can answer if you can answer that in a very short time. But what are the biggest short-term pain points CMOs have with their understanding their business environment?
What is meant exactly with short-term pain points? What could that mean?
Uh, I don't. I'm guessing here, but based on
Yes.
what I've seen on on the market, is that many people have a hard time defending, for example, their budgets, or have a hard time defending maybe that they should do research because they have to
Yes.
take a budget that is being shrinking, so they have to move it from, say, Google Ads to
Yes.
understanding markets. So I suppose those type of maybe issues that you have heard now that you're speaking to
Yeah.
CMOs out there.
Yes.
The
No,
first therapy call.
yeah, I think budget is definitely. I mean, budget is always a topic. How do you defend your budget? How do you make sure you have the right split between performance and brand? How do you argument your brand budget, etc.? Because it's, especially if you're a small brand, I mean, it's not so easy to prove that what you do on the brand side of things is really worth it, because proving impact is yeah, not that easy and quite complex. And then I think the second pain point is having to do too much and not being able to afford the focus that you would need to have. Because you might have the board that is surrounding you and that tells you, hey, we are not yet on TikTok. Hey, we are not in that channel. Hey, we have that event. So just, I think one very big pain point is being able to stay focused with all the inputs you get from other parts of the organization, which think they understand marketing very well and they know better than you what needs to be done. But that just makes it very, very overwhelming. And also, it's not very smart, because you don't have to do everything. You just have to do the right things and have to do them in the right way.
Someone very smart told me, and I don't know if it's a good advice or not to solve the pain points that you just brought up, but that strategy is the best way to help you to say no to things.
Yes, of course.
Because,
I mean,
and I
it's,
think that also gives you the
yes,
focus.
yes. Strategy is about saying yes and saying no. You have a list of things, and you have the yes list and you have the no list. And I think the art for every CMO is to be like brutal on saying no. You just have to say no to so many things, and that's not always easy. It's hard.
No, and I think it's based on what you just are saying, and I think that's kind of where the research journey starts to help you fuel the reasons also why you should say no or yes to certain things.
Yes,
Because if you have
exactly. I
insights,
mean,
you can use them as
exactly.
arguments.
If you have a solid strategy, it's based in data and not just gut feeling. It's much easier for you as a CMO to say, "Hey guys, we did our work. We came to the conclusion. We do this, this, this because this, this, this." and all the rest we just don't do it because it's not in line with our strategy. And then it's still hard enough. Yeah, that sounds now very, very optimistic. It's still not that easy, but at least you have some arguments, because if you never did that work, you just don't have that arguments at all, and you will always run circles between
So
different.
basically, I mean, the good thing with being a small brand is that you're constrained with, you don't have enough money, you don't have enough time because you don't have the people. So, I mean, so your biggest survival will be learn
No.
to say no.
It's not. I can tell you, it's not. I see so many small brands, and they have few people, they have few money, but they still manage to spin around like madness and just getting nowhere because, making priorities, I think, doesn't come naturally to a lot of people, and I don't see that. I cannot confirm that. Just because you have few resources, it doesn't necessarily mean you allocate them more smartly. It sounds very logic, but unfortunately it isn't.
No, I think it actually keeps you up at night because you get stressed that you feel there's so many things you want to do. So you think more about the things you want to do instead of focusing on the things you can actually have the time to do better than your competitors. Julia, thank you so much for joining me today.
It was a
For you
pleasure.
out there listening in, and thank you for comments. We will cut this down into a pod, and you will find it on Spotify. And reach out to Julia, I think, if you want to. She's very active on LinkedIn, so
Yes,
reach out to her there if you have any more
yes.
questions.
Please follow.
And sorry,
Please follow.
yeah, please follow her. And yeah, thank you so much, and have a nice day, everyone.